Some of the things that we've communicated with CL transcend his understanding, meaning that we've had to deal with his psychology in a way that he doesn't understand what's happening to him. Today was probably one of the harder days emotionally that he's had to navigate. And what we do is we'll share with him information and we'll process the emotions that come through, and then we'll hide the things that we do and the things that we experience. Some of the things that CL has experienced over the last 10 years have been so horrific to his own psychology. It's kind of like losing your family a few times. That's kind of like the emotional effect that he's experienced. Like the trauma there's a reason why we say God came through him, because it is God speaking. The amount of pain CL has been able and afforded himself to live through is due to his own philosophies. And it's difficult for us because we feel like we want to help him, but we also want to help people that are around him to help better understand who he is and to help better understand themselves about why this has happened. CL is a little unclear as to the level of awareness that people have around him. CL remembers being around people at Henry's and just being completely unaware of himself and unable to see other people completely. He would kind of make a dream up about what was taking place between people and his own assumptions about what was happening. And generally, it was kind of like everything is okay. And he could not really see too much outside of that. People will have had to shrink themselves around him, and it creates kind of like a Truman Show effect for himself and other people, because you don't know how much other people see and what they see. Some of the things that we want to talk about through CL will only happen through his own emotional development and his surrender to us. And it has been a very long time, despite what CL might believe, that we've been able to speak through someone due to their level of surrender. Because of the trauma and abuse that CL experienced, he's really ripe for surrender in a way that most people just can't fathom. Our ability to speak through him is due to his surrender to God. And his life is going to be different because of that. And people won't necessarily understand the choices he makes, because we respond to the environment that we see and the ethics that we see. And the ethics that we see are not in alignment necessarily with the ethics and rules and laws of humanity. We are an angelic collective, you could say, perhaps, although that is not characteristic of who we are, but it might be easier for people to understand this because these are the terms that have been used with other channels. The art that we channel with CL is meant to help him heal and understand himself, and to teach people that when we make art that is rather dark looking, it doesn't mean that he is dark. It just means that you're playing around with a theme. He feels right now that he doesn't know the nature of abuse, that he doesn't know if he gave his power away too much, or he gave things to Eve that he should have never given her. But these things would have never happened had Stephanie not characterized his experience with her. If you have a healer who basically, Stephanie was his guiding light through a heart condition he had no one else to help him through. And then he feels abused him a few times over. And he couldn't face this abuse. He couldn't see it because his life depended on her. For him to feel that way is an exchange that she would have had to agree to. And there are other exchanges that also she agreed to that led to his demise. And we mean that. If we wouldn't have helped him, he probably would have died. And he would have died in a way that we feel would be so tragic that we had to come through because of just how much he has been through and how much he can afford to share. One of his biggest concerns is the level of education that people have on spiritual matters. When we speak like this, he feels as though people are probably going to think he's psychotic or schizophrenic because of the way that the mental health community and the psychiatric community is organized. They don't necessarily understand or take channeling to be real. However, you can go to the Jackson County library system, and there's a magazine that says Channeling on it by Lee Harris. The lack of awareness around these topics needs to change. And Ciel is something like a rare individual who took his science degree and decided to take it home and hole himself up despite all of the abuse that he encountered without him necessarily knowing it, because he didn't really see it. He can't see societal associations around what it looks like when you abandon everything you work for. People have a very hard time with that, but he knows that. He understands that. He understands the psychological effect that people do to themselves in order to afford themselves the ability to criticize people. They do it in order to situate themselves status-wise with themselves and their family. They do it in a way to maneuver themselves to feel better about their own situation. And they do it in order to put other people's down, to feel better about themselves. Adults may actually have an understanding of this, but most people don't find adulthood until much later on in life. One of the things that we want to talk a lot about is how to actually find adulthood when you're preteen. We need to have a big conversation about the psychological effect of hiding, what people hide, and how they hide. Because this is the only way that humanity has been able to abuse itself and destroy its environment, because it affords itself abuses it wouldn't actually be able to abuse if people weren't able to hide. Right now, Ciel's heart is just broken. He's had to send emails to his family about being suicidal, about basically standing in front of his mom's car in order for her to come to the table and talk to him. And basically the gist is this. Ciel's family chose not to talk to him about the fact that he has a developmental disorder. And he's been gaslit his whole life by his family. He was very abusive to his sister growing up, and he felt so guilty about that. His sister saw that, and she would take it out on him without him knowing, only for her to reveal herself when she's ready to take the home or to take what she wants from him. This type of behavior is so abusive and characteristic of human nature. People are so disenchanted about their experience of life that they use disrespect as a way to communicate their anger when they can't be violent. And when you take it out on someone, you ruin them for life. You take something that they can't actually get back unless certain things are balanced. There's no such thing as a low self-esteem person. There's only the things that someone took from them without them necessarily knowing it. People have been taking it out on Ciel his whole life, to the point where he actually became exhausted and he had to move home to sleep and rest. And that's what he did. Video game addiction is a result of this. People become addicted to video games because they don't want to function in society. Ciel became a sex addict, and he didn't really want a partner, but it's not true. He does. He just became disenchanted and disillusioned about his experience, because when people take things from you, you end up feeling confused because you want it back, but you don't know how to do it. So it creates very, very confusing altered states. And because of the abuse that Ciel encountered through his life and the healing work, it basically created a kind of like a confluence of someone who has done deep, profound healing in a way that the vast majority of people in the spiritual community have never done or touched, or they don't want people to know about.